Have you ever seen a bad movie? It may seem a silly question to ask, but there are those that would argue that no matter how unrealistic the dialogue, no matter how illogically characters act, and no matter how inconsistent the story is, one cannot determine that a film is bad by any objective standard due to the fact that it's art. Others say that we can judge art objectively, but that the conclusions drawn will never be anything more than surface-level observations, and there's no value in doing so. I wish to prove that these ideas are both ridiculous and harmful to the media we consume so heavily nowadays. Before proving that art can be judged objectively, I find it important to define our terms. When we make an objective analysis, as we all do in our daily lives, we're performing an examination of an object, action, or concept that is not influenced by our personal feelings. For instance, if you found a grizzly bear sleeping with her cubs in your backyard, you would consider a few objective elements of the situation. 1. I am a human. 2. That is a grizzly bear. And 3. Humans can't fight grizzly bears. You would then make the judgment, fighting the grizzly bear is a bad idea. This is the correct judgment, and it ties into a few other definitions. For one, what do good and bad mean in objective analysis? Unfortunately, those words have many subjective definitions, such as enjoyable, virtuous, unpleasant, or immoral. Therefore, I'd like you to imagine a line. This line represents the standard that we hold things to. For example, the sun would be a bad place to live. Why? Because it has no air, no food, and no water, all of which are necessary for human life. Also, you'll burst into flames if you get within a few million miles of it, so it falls below the line. Regardless, the important thing to note is that I didn't simply call the sun bad, I called it a bad place to live. I set a standard and qualified my statement. We can easily do this with all art. As I'm sure everyone's seen, young children will often draw portraits of family members. It's a precious thing, and when viewed subjectively, those drawings will hold great value to those portrayed. However, a wobbly egg with two lopsided dots of different size functioning as eyes, while red crayon in the shape of a malformed donut forms what one assumes to be a mouth, does a poor job of representing what the toddler meant to represent. Of course, we don't tell a child that their artwork is of objectively low quality, that would be cruel. But as we grow older, we learn to take constructive criticism and improve our skills accordingly. At least, we're supposed to. The point is that we can judge whether a film achieved its goals, of which there are many. For one, many films have the goal of presenting a realistic universe. Vantage Point, directed by Pete Travis, portrays a rather grim terrorist attack from many different points of view, or vantage points, if you will. It attempts to present this scenario in a rather serious way, as though it could happen in our own world. Therefore, when a 47-year-old overweight Forrest Whitaker chases two significantly younger-looking men, one of whom is a trained federal agent, through several blocks of Salamanca, Spain, one's suspension of disbelief begins to fade. However, that's just one instance, which does not equate to poor writing overall. One misplaced brushstroke can easily be painted over, but when these begin to pile up, we start having problems. When a child stands in the middle of traffic for an absurd amount of time in order to facilitate a plot contrivance, when an international terrorist and savage murderer who succeeded in kidnapping the president swerves and subsequently destroys everything he's worked for in order to avoid hitting the girl, when a Secret Service member who would have gone through a 9-month background investigation turns out to be a major antagonist, and when Secret Service members start leading an investigation, chasing suspects, and firing into crowds at the risk of an international incident when their job in real life is to simply stand there and take a bullet for the president, you begin to stray further and further from reality, and it becomes clear that the writer will do whatever is necessary to get any event they desire to take place. We need these terrorists to be stopped, so let's put the little girl in the road. In a subjective sense, this causes the audience to lose investment. Or, the audience could become more invested after these things take place, if that's how they feel. In objective terms, however, this is poor writing. And yet, modern film critics are completely unwilling to separate their feelings from their view of the film. Which is fine, but they force their postmodernist, reader response theory-induced monstrosity of a philosophy on anyone who wants to understand how storytelling works in a mechanical sense. If you so much as mention a plot hole, Patrick Willems will be right there to tell you that you're watching movies wrong, as he waves his cinema studies degree in your face. These critics would have you believe that emotional resonance is all that matters in writing, while they completely ignore that we relate to characters because we understand them. If a character who nearly died trying to protect their father out of a sense of familial obligation ends up brandishing a weapon over their sleeping nephew with no explanation as to what drove them to that point, it's an objective flaw. More importantly, it becomes impossible for fans to understand and relate to the character. Without consistent characterization, we become unable to understand why a character may react a certain way, which makes them unrelatable. Without consistency within a story, we become unable to be invested in said story because anything can happen if the writer wants it to. Without objectivity in art criticism, there's no need to hold oneself to a standard, which can only result in the downfall of art itself. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through, or, I don't know, skipping to the end. I guess that's a possibility. But regardless, the point is, I actually made this video based on an essay that I wrote for school. It was just kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, but I do want to start uploading more, but it's gonna be content like this, where it's either just me talking about a subject, or I have a couple of ideas for response videos that I'd like to do, where I just watch a video and then pause it to talk about it for hours on end. My next semester of college actually starts soon, which is crazy to think about because I started uploading memes to this channel when I was like 14, so a bit strange to think about. But point is, I can't really promise anything with upload schedule because if you're a college student, I'm sure you know how busy life can get, but you know, I'm not gonna make any promises, but I want to upload more often, so, you know, if you liked this kind of content, you know, stick around, and I'll see you later.